Welcome to First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. I'm your host, James Gardiner, certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, yoga instructor, human being. This platform, for the pros, by the pros, anybody in the performance space, and beyond. Welcome here to share in the stories of professionals, experiences, journeys, learning along the way. It's a platform to connect, to network, and to be a part of a community that cares, with conversations that matter, experiences that resonate, and generate ideas, thought-provoking, organic dialogue, passionate pros. Brought to you as always by First Star Therapy, Mobility Tape, Epic, and Benchmark Athletics. In association with the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association. It's First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast. Thanks for being here. Thank you for being a part of it. All right, so welcome to the Shot You Don't Want to Take, a seminar in addiction and mental health in sport. Really appreciate everybody's time and efforts in carving this into your schedule. Paying to be here again, just want to remind everybody that 100% of the registration fees are going to advocates for mental health and addiction in the sport space. My name is James Gardiner. I'll be hosting and emceeing this evening. I'm a certified athletic therapist and certified strength and conditioning specialist. That's my realm, that's my role. But again, I wanted to thank everybody for being here, and we have a great lineup, a great topic, and obviously there was an investigation on TSN in the sports space a couple weeks ago that we can talk about at the end, and potentially throughout the course of this seminar this evening. We have Jens Casten, Mike Stroh, and a couple people from CCMHS, the Canadian Centre for Mental Health and Sport here, Krista Van Slingerland and Poppy Desclouds. Those are the panel guests for the evening, and we will make sure that we hear from each and every one of them. My job, again, is sort of to take us through this and where did this stem from, this seminar, where did it stem from, and where do we intend on going tonight? So those are the couple questions that I'll start off answering, and this stemmed from a podcast that I host called First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy roundtable. Session 37 had a young man on whose name is Brady Leovold. Brady was on a fast track to play professional hockey and fell into addiction and mental health. And in sharing his story on the podcast and through his own podcast, it was very raw and very real and eye-opening. And I took a step back as a practitioner and said, what is it that I can do? What can I house as a practitioner to help in this space? And in talking with Brady and in talking with Jens and with Mike, education, that's where I came around to, and what can we do to help? So this is where this seminar intends to go, is opening the conversation to how do we have the conversation? When do we have the conversation? What do we say? What don't we say? How do we refer? What resources can we use? All of those things we hope to at least open the door to this evening and get people connected to having the conversation. So what can we do to help as practitioners? My viewpoint has shifted drastically over the last few years. And the one thing that we can do in any situation is listen. And when we listen, we become an aid in the solution to any problem. We listen warmly, we listen openly, and we listen with intent. And by listening, we can be a part of the solution. We don't have to have all the answers, but by listening, we will be a part of that solution. I was speaking with a bunch of colleagues. I analyzed it myself, analyzed my feelings and my reactions to the TSN special, The Problem of Pain, which was a couple weeks ago. And a lot of people got their backs up about what was presented. Some other people really had their eyes open about what was presented. And then there were a bunch of people in between, at opposite ends of the spectrum, in the middle somewhere. Collectively as a group, Jens, Mike, and myself agreed that this is an opportunity for us to be a part of the solution by having the conversation. So again, this is the evening, this is the plan, and this is where we intend to go, is to bring us to the conversation so that we can all enter the space together and support one another. Jens Casten is a certified sports psychology coach. Mike Stroh just recently completed his MA in counseling psychology. And these are our primary panel guests for the evening. And then again, Krista Van Slingerland and Poppy Desclouds are here from CCMHS. But before we get to them, Jens, why don't you say hello, just introduce yourself to everybody, and then Mike will jump over to you after that.
Thank you so much, James. Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here. It's an honor to be able to speak in front of all of you practitioners and experts. And I'm very grateful to James that he invited me to be part of this panel. So like James said, my name is Jens Casten. I am born and raised German. I played 21 years of professional hockey in Germany as a goaltender. And after my retirement, I dabbled in management and sports marketing. I became an athletic therapist, but all along I've been mentoring and mental coaching young athletes and up to the professional level. I currently work, as Mike said, as a sports psychology coach, and I am daily confronted with addiction and mental health. Again, it's great to be here. Thank you so much, and I look forward to this.
Awesome. Thanks, Jens. And it's amazing to have you here and to carve in the time to putting this presentation together with Mike. So really appreciate that and look forward to hearing from you and your experiences along the way. Mike Stroh, MA in counseling psychology. Mike, I'll throw it over to you to say hi, and then we'll jump over to our friends at CCMHS.
Sure. Thank you, James, and at all, as they say. It's lovely to be here. You know, my name, as said, is Mike Stroh. I'm the founder of a mental health consultancy that specializes in K-12 education and workplace mental health called Starts With Me. And it was really born out of my personal and family catastrophes and subsequent healing and journey of well-being and being of service to others. I lived with addiction and mental illness for about 18 years. I'm a caregiver to my brother who lives with schizophrenia. And I've had the beautiful opportunity of making all of this part of my life. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. I'm also incredibly inspired and amazed by all the people that are here having this conversation. It's clear that this is important, that people care about this, and that there's a collective pull towards figuring out how we can improve our way of helping people. And I hope to be able to contribute to that conversation today. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I think just by being here and knowing that we are in the space together, talking about it in the sports realm may be a little bit different, but at the same time, this is applicable in personal lives and family lives for probably everybody on the call in some form or facet. So appreciate the share and appreciate you being here, Mike. And Krista and Poppy, I'll throw it over to you guys at the CCMHS and let you roll through your center and all the great things that you're doing there in Ottawa.
And thanks, guys, and thanks for having us. I'm going to just share my screen. I hope.
I closed ours. There you go. All right.
Okay, cool. And let's go full screen. Great. Is it happening? Oh.
slowly, but it's happening.
I had to break the wheel of death for a second. I was concerned. Okay. So I'm Krista Van Slingerland. I'm the executive director at the Canadian Centre for Mental Health and Sport. I was formerly a basketball player, came through my own mental health issues, and that led me to do a master's and a PhD focused on mental health and sport. And I'm joined by Poppy Desclouds. Actually, I think the next slide, yeah.
Krista,
it is black.
Black.
Yeah.
It's doing what it
Really?
does.
Okay, hold the phone. I'm sorry, you guys are.
No problem. No, we won't blame Zoom openly, but we'll just we'll get it figured out here. Yeah, there you go. Beautiful.
You're seeing things? Oh, okay, good. Cool. Okay. Poppy is joining me. She's a mental performance consultant and the director of care and education at the center, and also a PhD candidate. So I'll tell you a little bit about how the center came to be. We're only a couple of years old. We were founded in 2018 by Dr. Natalie Duran-Bush and myself. And the center was actually born out of my PhD research. So we did a participatory approach to research. And so 20 stakeholders from the realms of sport, academia, and mental health helped us design the center. And so we began offering sport-informed mental health care to athletes and coaches, although we've expanded who we care for, and Poppy will tell you about that a little later, in November of 2018, both virtually and in person. Over 13 months, we tested and refined our model and evaluated its effectiveness. And we were fortunate to gain charitable status in April of 2020. And so this year, what we've really been focusing on is increasing the scope of our reach across Canada so that we can help as many people as possible. We exist, and I mean, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. We exist because we know that mental illness and mental health challenges affect everyone, and that includes athletes. And while there's a huge body of research that shows us that sport in a recreational setting can enhance mental health, when you get into the competitive and high performance realm, there are unique factors that are specific to sport that can increase athletes' risk of experiencing psychological concerns, exacerbate existing concerns, or trigger new ones. The other thing we know, mostly from anecdotal evidence, but more research is showing us this, is that sport participants have unique needs when it comes to mental health care, and they often prefer practitioners who have a background and understanding in sport.
So what do we actually do at CCMHS? We take a three-pronged approach, one of which is a little bit more front and center. It's the thing that's most visible, and that's our mental health care. So we provide collaborative sport-informed mental health care from coast to coast. So all the way across Canada, we have practitioners in every province across Canada. And we work in a kind of unique model that Krista is going to talk about a little more. But the really important piece here is that all of our practitioners work from a sport-informed lens. So this means they either have personal sport experience, they have mental performance consulting training, or a mixture of the two, plus their mental health competencies. We also do research and community engagement. The research is so that we're constantly using evidence-based practices, but also contributing to the understanding of mental health in sport, which is still lacking pretty tremendously right now. And then community engagement allows us to expand our reach through grassroots sports all the way to high performance in order to connect with different communities and stakeholders. So that includes people like athletic therapists, the integrated sport teams, and coaches, so that we can start to reduce the stigma surrounding mental illness and start to get everybody engaged in the maintenance of mental health in sport.
Sorry, Poppy, my slide's not, there we go.
So at the center, we do have eligibility criteria, and this is ever expanding for us because we always want to increase our reach. When we first started, we had to really focus our scope, and even over the last year, we've expanded already. So we care for Canadian citizens, and they have to be 16 years or older, but that's 16 years all the way up to masters athletes. So we serve competitive and high performance athletes. And so obviously competitive does reach into grassroots. This isn't just national and Olympic athletes, professional athletes. This is a wide range of different performers. We also have recently expanded to performing artists, so dancers, musicians, as well as coaches and support staff. So that means as an athletic therapist or a sport doctor, you could be referring yourself to the center or referring one of your peers or colleagues, because we understand that mental health is also a part of the IST's world in the sport domain. And in order to qualify for CCMHS services, you do have to be experiencing some kind of mental health challenge. We're not just servicing mental performance needs. We do understand and have people that come to us for these things, but usually we'll refer to our external network of mental performance consultants rather than bringing them into the center, because we do mental illness assessment and we deal with functional impairments to mental health. So our team is really what makes us unique and I guess quite desirable in the sport world. A lot of athletes end up not seeking care and not continuing with care because they don't feel a connection to the practitioner that they've sought help from. They don't feel understood as an athlete. And so our care team is sports centered first and foremost. We're comprised of 21 different mental health practitioners with backgrounds in sport and specialized competency in sport. So right now we have 7 registered or clinical psychologists, 8 counselors, 3 specific mental performance consultants, and 1 family physician who really works just collaboratively with us in the background. Notably, though, 12 of our team members are professional members of the Canadian Sports Psychology Association, and 9 have dual competencies. So this means 9 of our practitioners are not only qualified in their mental health domain, but also as a sports psychology consultant working in the field of applied sports psych. We also have a care coordinator, that's me actually, who's a centralized point of contact for everybody that comes into the center. So I meet with every single client that's referred to the center, and I become a neutral point of contact for them so that we can make sure they're getting a team that has a good fit for them, they have a practitioner that they're actually getting along with, and that they have a continuity of care, that they're not lost to the system, which is what we see with a lot of athletes who end up dropping out of care.
So our model has 7 components that together make it unique, not only in Canada, but actually internationally as well. So Poppy's talked a lot about our practitioners having that sport background, and that's what makes the care sport informed, and that they reside across the country. And we've done that to get around jurisdictional barriers to practice and to ensure that we can offer in-person care when it's necessary. Like I said, we work in person and virtually, although with COVID, we've gone completely online, and actually athletes seem to prefer that because they can be stretching or fueling and recovering and seeing their mental health practitioner. Poppy is our fantastic centralized care coordinator. So she's a neutral and safe touch point, and she guides clients through the care process and also helps our practitioners adhere to our model, our procedures, and our policies. And then our practitioners take a collaborative approach. So there's always 2 practitioners on everybody's care team, a lead and a support. And in practice, the amount of collaboration really varies from case to case, from a client never seeing their support practitioner to those practitioners collaborating in the background. So the support is really acting as a sounding board for the lead. And then we've had cases where clients see up to 3 of our practitioners because they're experiencing complex symptoms, they're at a distance from their practitioners, and so we need to make sure that they're not only kept safe, but also enhancing their mental health and their sport performance. And the way that we connect all our practitioners and have them communicate is through electronic health records that are secure. Only the practitioners on a client's team will have access to that client's information. And in that way, our practitioners who are situated far from each other can communicate and stay up to date on client happenings. And then we also use a fee-for-service model. So the intake with Poppy is free of charge. We absorb that cost as the center. And then following that, each care session does carry a cost that's commensurate with what you'd find in the private and public sectors. So I think you guys might be getting into this a little bit later, but we never like to talk about the center and not explain when you should refer, just to have a little bit of understanding. So as ATs, you spend a lot of time with athletes, and so you're in a really great position to notice persistent and significant deviations from their baseline normal. When we say persistent, we're talking about 2 weeks or more. It's usually your flag, okay, I need to follow up on this. And significant, when we're talking about significant deviation, we're talking about symptoms that are impairing somebody's ability to experience positive emotions more often than negative, performs their roles and responsibilities, whether that be in the sport realm, in school, in their workspace. It's preventing them from having healthy relationships with other people and contributing meaningfully to their community. And so some things that you're looking for are those prolonged changes in thoughts, which athletes may verbalize to you, their self-talk, their behaviors, their appearance, and their feelings.
So referral is very easy, and we've done this on purpose because we want to make ourselves as accessible as possible. So you just have to visit our website. You can use the /refer, but the referral buttons pop up on our homepage as well. A really unique factor of the center is that there's no physician referral necessary to get an athlete or any kind of support team member into CCMHS for an intake. You can either refer yourself or you can refer an athlete or a colleague. You have to refer that person with their consent because I get in touch with them directly. So we try not to spring the care on anybody. You've got to have a conversation with them first. And we do ask you to acknowledge that the athlete or the practitioner has consented. You can also get in touch by email or phone, and these are direct communications with me. And this just allows us to have a longer conversation. If you have specific concerns about someone or about yourself and you're not sure how the care process works, I'm happy to have a longer conversation. At some point, that electronic referral form does have to go through. It's quite simple, and it's just a part of our way of tracking to make sure we don't lose anybody along the way. Once the referral comes in, we book an intake session with the client. That happens with me, and it happens at no charge. It's comprised of filling out an intake questionnaire that screens for a bunch of different mental health indices. And it also comprises a conversation with me. That conversation can be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how much the client wants to share. But I actually use those two pieces of information in order to refer to the best possible fit of a care team for that person. We use a really holistic approach in that I'm trying to find a fit of practitioner for the person, for the athlete, and for the core concerns that are flagged on the intake questionnaire and verbalized by the person coming into the center. Once I've actually made a referral to a care team, the care delivery starts usually between 5 and 7 days after the referral is made. So we have no wait time at this point. I know that's a major selling point for a lot of athletes who are waiting months, if not a year, to access care sometimes. And care delivery can last anywhere from 1 session to a full year. We work in blocks of sessions, so we check in every 4 sessions, but we don't have a limit on how long somebody can see their practitioner. And once someone exits from CCMHS, their file is put as inactive, but they're welcome to revisit us at any time if they need to re-access care.
So we aren't going to take questions because it may derail this whole presentation, but here are some frequently asked questions. Do we work with performance concerns? Poppy's addressed this, but we have a lot of people coming and thinking that we're just offering performance services. We will always, if anybody's ever ineligible and not having a mental health challenge would make somebody ineligible, we always make a referral to the community. So in this case, it would be to our network of mental performance consultants. Sometimes we have parents asking if their 15-year-old can come through the center. We have been known to bend the rules, but that's really about our practitioner team and their competencies and comfort. So we don't service younger athletes at this time because we don't have enough practitioners on staff with the training in child psychology and the care of younger individuals. So we want to make sure everybody's safe and within their scope of practice. But if we get a referral for a 15, almost 16-year-old and our team feels comfortable, we will take that person on. Can we help if somebody is suicidal? Unfortunately, we're not. So we're not a crisis center. We don't have the capacity to respond to crisis events for people who are not already in our system. Of course, if somebody's already matched with a practitioner, they would be available if that client is having crisis or distress. But we'll always direct people if you have a suicidal athlete, coach, or member of support staff. We'll direct them to 911 or the nearest emergency room. So with that, the next slide just has our contact information. We'll also throw it in the chat. You can connect with us online as well. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and you can feel free to email Poppy or I anytime if you have questions.
All right, thank you very much, and a lot of lead in there to some of the things that we're going to touch on. So Krista and Poppy, really appreciate you taking the time and all the work that you're doing at CCMHS. I'm sure we'll have plenty of questions to get your way afterwards, and lots of referral points as well with the practitioners we have in the room. So thank you once again, and if you need to head out, we appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you very soon. We're going to jump back into our presentation here. And as an athletic therapist and somebody who works in the performance space, all of these areas are areas where we can do just what we've started talking about, and that's starting with a conversation. So we're everywhere as practitioners, in locker rooms, in the weight room, in the training room, or out on the field and the sidelines, and we're privy to a lot of that information or a lot of conversations and hearing a lot of the things that are happening both in the locker room or in the therapy room, but also outside, because we're there and we're accessible. And I think both Poppy and Krista mentioned that connection that athletes feel to their practitioners. So this is an area that, as a practitioner myself, I feel we can always use a whole lot more support in terms of having resources and referees within this space, so that we can help in areas or get connected to people who have expertise in the areas that we may not be quite as comfortable. And so with that, we're going to send this over. Jens, I'm going to send this over to you, and let's jump into our presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James. Thank you, ladies. That was very insightful and educational. And I think it's fantastic what you guys are doing. And I will definitely refer some of my clients to you when and if needed. Thank you so much. As I mentioned earlier, my background is professional hockey, and during my career and throughout my presentation, I will refer back to my personal experiences throughout my career. And I want to start with, unfortunately, one of the entry drugs for a lot of addictions in sport, which is performance-enhancing drugs. My first personal experience with performance-enhancing drugs was when I was 27 years old. I just got traded just before Christmas, and our team doctor at the time was the former national doctor, a doctor of the Russian national team. So, you know, during the Cold War, we always had suspicions that there were things going on that were not legit. And I was sitting in a dressing room for my first game, which accidentally or incidentally happened to be in my hometown. So I wanted to look good in front of my family and friends. And our team doctor walked around the dressing room and stopped in front of everybody and every individual and held out a handful of pills. And I was like, well, this is odd. Even though we had the suspicion whenever we played against this team, the players, their facial expression, like big eyes, and they were always very aggressive. So there was the suspicion that something was going on. So anyways, he came around and he was standing in front of me, and he held his hand out and he said, take this. And I'm like, what is this? And he said, just don't ask, take them. And I refused to take them, and he wouldn't go away. So I finally took them, put them in my mouth, and threw them under my seat as he walked away. And after the game, I went up to him and I asked him to never do that again, or I will punch him in the face. I had a conversation with him after. He would not share with me what these pills were for and what the ingredients were. So my teammates kept using them. And unfortunately, a couple of my teammates went down the road of addiction, and it started with performance-enhancing drugs. If you want to do the next slide. And unfortunately, for a lot of athletes, this is where it leads. Street drugs, especially cocaine, are very popular amongst athletes. Of course, we can't generalize, but it's for a lot of guys and athletes, that's the go-to drug. Unfortunately, I had the experience, and I got introduced to cocaine, and it was very innocent when it started, if you can say that. But I went to a team party at one of my teammates, and I was there with my girlfriend, and he came to me and he pulled me away and he asked me to help him translate a letter. He took me in the bedroom, and I walked in there, and there was a mirror with 10 lines of coke. And I'm like, what is this? He's like, well, you're one of us, so have some. And I'm like, I'm not interested. He says, you're not leaving here until you take a line. And of course, you know, I didn't want to be a loser. So I had a couple of lines, and unfortunately, it didn't stop there. I got to a point where I used it on a daily basis and during the season, and I thought it was cool, and I felt great until it was about 3 weeks before the playoffs, when I woke up in the morning and my heart was going a million miles an hour. I thought I was having a heart attack, so I got in the car, rushed to the hospital, and the doctor said, we have to run some tests. We don't know what's wrong. I didn't want to come out with my lifestyle. I didn't want to confess to the doctor because he was also our team doctor, and I don't know if I could trust him. My fear was that if I confide in him, that I'm going to lose my job. So I was in the hospital for a week, and all they said was, you're fine. You just have to change your lifestyle, or you're not going to live to see 40. And that was definitely a wake-up call for me. One of my best friends wasn't as lucky. He died at 47 with a massive heart attack, and that was due to drug abuse. He was also a professional hockey player in Germany. And the bottom line is that people knew that we were abusing drugs, but nobody came to us and talked to us about it. And even after I had my episode, I did not feel comfortable or safe to confide in either the manager, the coach, or the trainers or the doctors, because I was afraid that if I confide in them, that they would go and rat me out. And this is where we have a huge responsibility. When we feel that there is something off, like the ladies from CCMHS just said, we have to look for the signs, and we have to have a trusting relationship with the athletes we're working with, because they're depending on us to take care of them. At the end of the day, it's their decision, but when we see the red flags, we have to be able to find the conversation, be able to listen, and be a safe place for our athletes, right?
Yeah, no, Jens, I'll just jump in quickly from the practitioner side in terms of the
Yes.
daily use in the clinic and in the sports realm, in the gym, the therapy room, on the bench. That duty of care comes first and foremost. And I think the older that I get and the more time that I spend understanding that duty of care and really getting comfortable with that, housing those difficult conversations is where a lot of the solution begins. And so as part of our role and as part of this education process and opening the conversation with CCMHS, with yourself and with Mike coming up, we have a duty as well to understand that we are a part of that conversation. And if we're not having the conversation, we then get rolled up into being part of the problem instead of part of the solution. And so you've touched on some personal experience, and I think that's amazing. I really appreciate your willingness to share, because I think those things go a long way as well. And they also allow you to connect, I'm sure, with the people that you deal with on a regular basis now. And I just want to reiterate that for no matter what stage of your career that you're in or what realm that you work in, beginning to understand that those tough conversations need to be had when you're hearing things in the locker room or seeing things or seeing those behavior changes or noticing thoughts, or athletes are sharing this with you, but they're not comfortable. They don't want you to tell anybody else. We have a duty of care to the long-term health of every single person that we come in contact with in our profession. So as a professional, if you're not comfortable or I'm not comfortable having that conversation with the athlete, there are people out there that can have those conversations and help us to have those conversations to facilitate that a little bit more. So great shares. Let's keep going. Thanks.
Thank you, James. James mentioned earlier the TSN documentary, The Problem of Pain. The problem of pain is a huge issue for athletes on any level, but especially on the professional level. And if you haven't watched it, I would highly recommend that you watch it. It's about 3 former NHL players Ryan Kessler, Kyle Quincy, and Zenek Konopka. And I briefly met the latter two, and I feel for them. And I've gone through similar things. You know, when you're a professional athlete, especially in a team sport, you don't want to be injured. Nobody wants to be injured, but especially when you're in a team setting, you don't want to let your team down, but you also don't want to lose your spot on the team. So an athlete's health should always be a practitioner's number one priority. And unfortunately, that's not always the case, because the practitioners have pressure, especially in the professional setting, from the management, from the owners, from the sponsors, to have the top players on the ice. So Ryan Kessler said something very significant during this documentary, and that was, I would have played with one leg. And that speaks volume, and it speaks for pretty much every professional team athlete out there. I was the same. I had a flake fracture in my knee. My knee was like a balloon. Our team doctor couldn't go on the road. I went on the road. They drained my knee. When we got to the rink, they actually had a doctor there. I had 3 injections so I can play. So I didn't want to say no, because I didn't want to let my team down, but I also didn't want to, I was a goalie. I didn't want to lose my starting position. So this is where practitioners have to put a foot down and educate the athlete about the long-term effects that these medications not might have, but will have on their health. When an athlete is injured, at the end of the day, it's his decision to say, I'm playing, whether you give me a painkiller or not, or you give me an injection or not, but it's the practitioner's decision to say, I'm not doing this because I don't want to be responsible for your long-term effects. In Ryan Kessler's case, there's blame, but we also have to put up a mirror and say, okay, it was my decision to take the injection all over and over and over again so I can perform. But we have to find a balance, and we have to build, and this is not when someone is injured or someone is suffering from addiction. We as practitioners or coaches or therapists, we have to build a foundation with these athletes so they know they have a trusting source where they can go and say, listen, I need your help, I need your guidance, and I need your advice. And this is one of the utmost important jobs that we have, to build a trusting relationship so the athletes know, whether it's on a professional level or amateur level or Olympic level or minor level, that they can come to us and confide and have that trust where they know, if I spill the beans, I know I'm not going to be ratted out.
Yeah, so some great points. And I think that accountability piece is massive, right? Like, as a practitioner who's in the room or on the training floor or in the clinic or on the bench, we definitely have a duty of care to educate. But if there are areas that we're not comfortable educating in, or we feel like that trust bond is going to be broken, we then have a duty of care to get informed, or a duty of care to bring somebody in who can inform in those areas and start to build that trust outward. I think that two-way trust between athlete and practitioner is absolutely massive. I've been in the professional space. I understand these conversations are difficult. I understand what's actually happening, not everywhere, but that educational piece is massive. And I don't think there was a lot of that time spent in that documentary. And not that we're going to talk about that documentary one way or the other all night long, but there is some accountability on the athlete if they're an adult and they're making these decisions, but there's definitely some accountability on our side too. So there's a happy medium, and you touched on that as well. And I think these are great points just to consider. If and when I'm going to have these conversations, do I have the support of the athletes, the trust of the athletes, and then do I have the support of the medical staff and the right people? CCMHS as a center is one of only a few in the world, like globally, that have access to athletes, like in the sports space specifically. And so if you didn't know about it before, I mean, you've already got your money's worth. You know about this center, and I think just having those conversations with those professionals, or finding professionals in your local area that can support you as a practitioner and therefore support your athletes a little bit better, that's massive. That's a huge win for all of us. Go ahead, Mike.
Absolutely.
I think you can flip
Thank
it.
you, James. Yeah. So I'm not going to go into too deep of a detail with this slide, because Mike is going to talk about this and go a little more in depth. And also the ladies of CCMHS talked about it briefly. But, drug abuse, whether it's prescription drugs or street drugs, generally at some point will lead to anxiety and depression. And unfortunately, I personally suffer from anxiety, and I've been suffering from anxiety since I was 6 years old. Never have been diagnosed until I was 43. For years and years and years, I was labeled hypochondriac, and during my career, I had no one to go to and share what was going on for me, that I have these panic attacks. And when I shared it, they sent me to the doctors, and the doctor said, he has nothing, he is totally fine. So depression and anxiety is something that is very, very common in athletes, whether it's performance anxiety or stress disorder, depression, because number of reasons. Again, Mike will go into that in deeper details. But here again, it's so important that we know how to handle someone who is dealing with mental challenges, whether it's illness or whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety. But again, Mike will touch on that a little later.
Yeah, and I think there's a number of professionals in here who are in the professional sports space, as well as the amateur space, collegiate level, university, and people will be picking this up hopefully afterwards as well. And I think one thing that I've always talked to students about and talked to my former self about and my future self about is knowing our athletes and patients. So doing more than associating them with the injury they are when they walk in, if it's somebody you're seeing on a one-off. Understanding who they are, and if you're there on a daily basis, you understand which shoe they tie first. You understand what a handshake looks and feels like on a good day and on a not so good day. And Poppy touched on it, Krista touched on it, and you've touched on it. And I just want to reiterate that as well, is like how we know our athletes and what we know about them goes a long way in A, building the trust, but B, also helping us recognize signs and symptoms, not only of injury that shows up physically, but on that mental side, right? And in the addiction side of things as well. So I keep jumping in. I don't mean to interrupt, but all of this is so real in this space that I really appreciate this, and it's great information.
I appreciate that you are actually jumping in and put it in your terms, and I'm very grateful for that. So moving forward, we all know, the pressure on athletes, especially again on the professional level, is immense, and it grows on a daily basis, whether it's through social media, mainstream media, coaches, managers, owners, fans, family, and the pressure that we put on ourselves to perform. It gets overwhelming, and a lot of athletes are suffering from performance anxiety and depression, and it's really, really important that they have an outlet and have someone to turn to when they're struggling. It's I'm sorry, I have a cat meowing. It's very distracting. Sorry about that. For me, again, I go back to my career. It was ages ago, and we didn't have any mental coaches. We didn't have any psychotherapists or psychologists on the roster. And I dealt with my anxiety and my depression. I grew up in a very abusive home. My father was an abusive alcoholic, and that's why I started suffering from anxiety when I was 6 years old. And it was it was devastating for me not to know what was going on for me, because I had no idea what I was suffering from. I just felt like I was not normal. And we now have the tools, the knowledge, the education to help these athletes. And again, it's all about building relationships. If you're a team practitioner and you work with 30 players or athletes or 50 athletes, yeah, it's very time consuming to build relationship with each and every one of them. But it's necessary. And it's the time we have to take. And that's the responsibility we have to take. And the greatest gift that we can give them is us, and is an ear to listen. And sometimes these athletes are not looking for advice. They just want someone as a sounding board. And we have the ability, we have the capacity to be there for them. And for that, I'm very grateful. I love what I'm doing, and I love being around athletes, and I love helping them be more successful, but also live happier lives. Our main mandate, and we all, in some shape or form, gave a code of ethics, and that is protecting our athletes. And we have to question and ask ourselves, are we doing everything and anything in our might to actually protect our athletes? You know, when we watch a documentary like The Problem of Pain, it makes me cringe, and it makes me feel horrible, not because I went through similar stuff, but because they're going through it and they're suffering way worse than I am suffering. But there are other ways. We're living in 2020, and there's alternative medicine. There's different ways to treat athletes without pumping them with chemicals. And this should be our mandate, to find ways to treat our athletes so they are healthier, and once they retire, they still have a great life and not suffering from the long-term effects from the medication that they have been fed over their careers. And again, I want to wrap this up, and I want to say thank you again for listening, for giving me the chance to speak in front of you and to be part of this great group. And I want to ask you to do the best. I know you are doing the best, but do better, and take care of the athletes that are in your care. Again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jens. And Mike, just before we jump over to you, I just wanted to reiterate that, and it was amazing to hear that CCMHS takes on practitioners as well. So we know that we're a part of this, and I think that's an amazing piece as well, because we can support one another through these conversations as well. But one point that I like to drive home as often as possible is that we do not have to be everything to everybody. We don't have to be the expert in these fields, but we should do our very best to know who is, to know somebody who is an expert in the areas that we're not strong in. And that's really where I've come to in my career, is building out a model of integrative care for the athlete. If I can't handle it, I have no problem referring outward to a sports chiropractor, a physiotherapist, a mental health practitioner. But I have to have those as quote unquote tools in my toolbox, referees, references that we can network with to make this a more holistic approach. It's not that it's all doom and gloom in the pro sports space, but outside of the pro sports space, resources can be tough. So when resources are tough, we rely on one another to navigate. If you're in rural Ontario, you may not have experts, but COVID's taught us a lot of things, and remote work helps. It definitely helps. And we just heard from experts at the beginning. We've heard from Jens, who's also moved to the online space. And we'll hear now from Mike Stroh. So Mike, appreciate you being on, man. Take over and run with this. And I'll do my best not to interrupt you.
No, please do if the impulse arises. So I think some of the things I was going to cover were covered already, so I'll skip over those. But I just want to draw our attention to this little map here, or this little diagram that my colleagues and I have kind of slowly put together. And this is about kind of knowing what's happening inside of you so that you can be of service to the people that you're caring for or working with. So we talked about knowing the signs. It's pretty, I mean, as a human being, you are wired to be able to see suffering in another human being. Beyond, the ins and outs and the intricacies of serving that person over a long period of time. Of course, it takes a lot of practice and skills and et cetera. But as was mentioned, that's not really your job as practitioners in these situations. So just being a human, recognizing that your athletes are human goes a very, very long way in developing sort of a sense of compassion and empathy for what they're going through. So knowing the signs, I think one thing I'll reiterate is that we're all human. We all suffer. We all feel sad. We all get angry. We all feel, a whole range of emotions. But as Poppy was saying, or one of the women from CCMHS, was that when these things become prolonged and they are distinctly different from that person's normal behavior. So this is another thing Jens was saying about developing, I think James too, developing relationships with your athletes so that you actually know who they are as a human will go a long way in your ability to start identifying, hey, person A, maybe she's behaving in a way that is not appropriate to the scenario that's going on right now. And so if you look at the model, going to this idea of self-awareness, it's kind of knowing, are you capable of providing support to this person? Or are you aware that, this is outside of my scope of practice and I need to ask for help? And so the next one here, boundaries, is oftentimes we may approach somebody and ask them if they kind of want our help, and they give us a response that we don't like. A lot of times people just ignore that and carry on anyways. So it's just really important to respect people's boundaries, know where your boundaries start and end, and then, learning how to communicate that to other people is kind of what I'll get into. This quickly, which I think can help to clarify, you see this little model here. This is a really helpful way to distinguish between mental health and mental illness. The y-axis here is mental health. Every single human being has, you have a brain, you have mental health. And on any given day, people's mental health go up and down this spectrum. The x-axis here is mental illness. So to be diagnosed with a mental illness, you need to see a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist. You need to meet a whole bunch of criteria. But what this really model shows us is that we can have a mental illness and still have good mental health. You can have no mental illness and have bad mental health. You can have you can have mental illness and bad mental health. And so you can kind of see how this works on any given day. And for people that have a diagnosis, like myself or like my brother or like many other people in the world, generally speaking, for us, it takes a little more work to find balance and to kind of pick ourselves back up if we're having a difficult time. So I think it's just helpful to identify the difference between these two things, because in this push for mental health awareness, these lines are getting blurred and not discussed accurately. So I wanted to touch on that.
That's an amazing slide, Mike. If you could just jump back to that one just for a second, because I think that one that one deserves a whole lot of attention, right? And so that's a difference between being anxious and having anxiety. Right? Like these are two different things. And so when we're looking at mental illness and mental health, I think that differentiation and looking at this on a very simplistic format like this does it for me. It's a great visual. And I think it's one that we can all sort of post and start to talk about, at least in clinics and in the strength and conditioning space or the pro space, and everybody can relate to that. You can see what fits sort of within those boxes and where that overlap happens. And I love that idea of or the visual, for me at least, of that continuum, right? Moving up and down that spectrum on a daily basis, knowing that mental health is a thing that we all house. It's not a thing that you have if you're going badly. And I think that's huge, and distinguishing that for people, and for myself, like I just kind of got a little bit excited about that one. I get goosebumps a little bit with that one, because it's a bit of an aha moment, you know, and I think that's fantastic. So keep going. I promised I would only interrupt when necessary, so let's call it necessary.
All right, I love it. I love it. No, and I have like almost a paper on my website and a video about this that goes into much more detail. So if anyone is interested after, happy to share that. So this was discussed, like the boundary between the two. What I think is not discussed or well understood is addiction. What does addiction even mean? The medical community has very little consensus on this. I take the approach of that it's sort of a three-pronged thing. It's almost like a spiritual thing, it's a psychological thing, and it's a physical thing. I am very fond of Dr. Gabor Mate, who's a Canadian doctor. He's an addiction specialist. He's world renowned. And his kind of definition is that addiction is a manifestation of any behavior that a person craves, finds temporary relief or pleasure in, but suffers negative consequences as a result of that behavior. And no matter how bad those negative consequences are, they can't stop. So personally, I was convicted of trafficking marijuana in high school. I was a very promising golfer. Drugs just destroyed all of that for me. And no matter what happened, I could not step out of this sort of desire to be high because I didn't know how to deal with anything. So another simple way is drugs are not the problem. Drugs are the solution. Okay. The problem is the underlying mental health concerns. And without another solution, we turn to drugs, or we'll turn to anything that we can get our hands on to make that pain go away. So things, when people are not willing to accept that they have a substance use problem, denial is a big thing. Don't even notice I am lying. It's a great acronym. And people get really defensive. So, you may see something. Here's a great example. If I'm in the thrills, the grasp of my addiction, if somebody tells me something that I know is good for me, I'm going to do the opposite on purpose just to spite them. And then I'm going to blame them for telling me to do what I assume they told me to do. So that's just kind of an example of like how the illness really like destroys people. And I'm a good example of that in my previous life. So another underlying motivation of addictive behavior, or what drives addiction, is this idea of negative core beliefs. And this is sort of a more psychological perspective, but we have negative core beliefs about ourselves. So if I'm an athlete, I'm not good enough. My career is going to be over. I suck. Everything's my fault. I'm a bad person. If I don't succeed in sports, nobody's going to love me and my world's going to come crashing down. I may also have negative core beliefs about other people. So I can't trust the coach. I can't trust the trainer. I can't trust my teammates. I can't trust my family. If I tell everybody the truth of my situation, no one's going to love me. And so, of course, when people are kind of, almost like, what's the word, like lulled into that, or it's not the word I'm looking for, but anyway, when people are stuck in that place, it's no wonder that they isolate and hide and lie and deny and etc. So, it's really important, and it's been the theme in some sense, is our willingness to listen openly, kindly, compassionately, and not try to fix people. So that is a tricky thing to balance when you are working. And, in some situations, it's not your responsibility to deal with this person's problems. So that goes back to the boundaries and understanding, what is my responsibility, what is not, and how can I help here, but not, it's the idea of putting the mask on first when the plane's going down. So you got to take care of yourself. You have to be wary of putting yourself in bad situations, with simultaneously holding your ethical, need or role to be of service, to the people you're helping. So this is a quick way to just understand what goes on inside the mind of a human being. On the outside of this little diagram, you see situations and experience. So if I'm an athlete and I get injured, that's sort of an experience that triggers this little thought process in here. So my thoughts start to run, my emotions start to get intense. I have body sensations, I have an impulse, and then I choose a behavior. And so this is really just to expand your kind of capacity to understand how things work in people so that you can just notice it. And it's really important to notice it in yourself. That goes back to this self-awareness part of the model. It's like, I need to know how my thoughts lead to my feelings, lead to my behaviors, so that I can communicate that to my athletes or to the people I'm being of service to. And when you are able to communicate these things authentically and sincerely to your athletes, just as on a daily basis, today I feel like shit because my kid did X and I'm thinking I'm the worst parent in the world, or I'm da 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 da. If you can be honest like that, then that person is going to be so much more likely to be honest back to you when they're having a hard time.
I think that's absolutely crucial, and to hear it from you in that space and to sort of take that on and to understand that, again, like everything you've highlighted and has been highlighted to this point is we don't have to be anything, but if we're going to be one thing, it's a listener, but opening that by being an open listener, non-judgmental, right? And being, which is incredibly hard to do. And maybe we'll touch on that, or you touch on that, or we can get to that in the Q&A at the end, because I have about 15 questions lined up on my own already for you. So anyway, let's keep rolling.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll skip this because this point's been sort of crammed down everybody's mind tonight. So these are the 4 domains in a clinical setting: thoughts, behaviors, sensations, and emotions. Okay. That's kind of like how people get assessed for how they're functioning. I want to try to play this and I'm going to just see what happens here. No, it's not working. Can anyone hear this? James, can you hear that?
No, I can't hear it, but you can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyhow, that video is an example, kind of what I mentioned before. As human beings, we are wired for empathy and compassion. We don't need words to communicate. Okay. In some sense, the idea behind that is communication is pre-verbal. Goes back to this idea: you can be of incredible service to other people just by being yourself and by communicating to these people as a human being, not as like some assumed identity that you're embodying and projecting onto them. And, oh, that person is an athlete, so they're not going to. Just be a human. And that goes such an incredibly long way. So how you may start to communicate these things, and there's just a couple more slides and I'll wrap it up. But to take that point further that James was just saying, this is very, very helpful, at least for me. And I think it can be for you. So you can think about this personally and also when in communication with somebody else. Excuse me. So if you're trying to model, here's another thing is modeling the behavior of openness and vulnerability. That's going to encourage other people to do the same. And you can start to do that by separating thoughts from feelings in your communication. Everyone says, oh, I feel that, the world is unfair, or I feel that X, but that's not a feeling, that's a thought. So when we want to say, I think the world is unfair and it makes me angry. So you could say to an athlete, I think that referee is an idiot and made a bad call, and I'm really frustrated about that. You could say, I think that whatever it is. But when you start to separate those two things, it makes a huge difference in your communication skills in a psychological perspective, right? Like you don't have to be so fanatical about it in common discourse, but this is a huge one. And also in your private lives, if you have a partner or a spouse or a friends, whatever, try this out and see. Maybe you already do it, but try this out and see how they respond to that. So we talked a lot about this idea of being a compassionate presence. So there's a simple idea between hearing and listening. Okay, I define it as, this is hearing. Oh yeah, really? Yeah. You're having a hard time at home. Your mom's sick, this, that. Okay, what was that? Sorry, I didn't hear it. Oh, sorry, Versus listening is you are present with the person and you are there for them. And they know instantly whether you're being sincere or not. It's okay if you can't listen to. If you know that somebody's trying to talk to you about something important and you don't have the capacity to take it in, you tell them that. You go back to the previous slide. I think that you really need my attention right now. I feel bad that I can't give it to you. So can we set up another time to talk about this? Something like that. It goes a really long way. So that kind of embodies this last slide of validation. I see that you are having a hard time. To me, I statements, I'm glad I remembered that. I statements are huge, okay? I think you're having a hard time. Or to me, it looks like you're having a hard time. Validating. So, when you're in a shitty mood and somebody kind of just validates the fact that you're in a bad mood and you have every right to be in a bad mood, it actually soothes us as an organism. Like our nervous system is soothed when we get kind of cared for in that way. Acceptance is not wanting this person or yourself to, when you start judging yourself for feeling bad, oh, I'm an idiot for feeling bad, I'm a loser, why do I feel this way, blah, 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 or judging another person. So you want to be able to accept the emotion for what it is. And the presence is being here with the person, giving them your eye contact. I can't remember, somebody in this presentation said it, but our attention is the biggest gift that we can give to anybody in any domain of life. So particularly when somebody is suffering and struggling with something difficult. So these are all just little, seeds, planting them, in your minds. This is lifelong practice. This is stuff that humans have not mastered in any possible way whatsoever, but we're starting to figure out some of the pathways. And so I hope that's all helpful. And let's get into some chats.
Yeah, let's jump over. So if anybody has any questions, just maybe type them in the box, or you can put up your virtual hand and I'll unmute you and you can talk this through. But just before we do that, guys, this was fantastic. And we had run through this a couple times and we had talked about our purpose and what we're trying to do. And we're really just trying to open the door here to have a conversation and to listen to one another and see what's out there in terms of where we're suffering, what walls we're running into. I just keep going back in my mind to the podcast session that I had with Brady Leovold. Brady has his own podcast as well, where he goes through his story, but it was just so raw and so real. And obviously will be a lifelong battle with addiction, right? Addiction and mental health issues and mental illness, maybe, I'm not sure. But those issues will be lifelong for Brady. And I encourage everybody out there who's willing to go and listen to his story, whether it's through my podcast or his own, it's irrelevant, but to listen to that and to see where he's attempting to take things now by using his recovery and his addiction as a source of strength to support other people going through those same things. I wrote down something at the beginning, I think, when Krista was saying, and each one of you has touched on that since. Everything starts with an idea. It's built, strength is built with conversation. And then from those conversations, we solidify it with community. And I think moving through that stage and starting here as a talking point, not in response to anything, but simply to open the door to know that there are people out there that can help us and to have the conversations with, so that we can begin to have these conversations.
Oh, Megan, she did it. Right.
She got it. Yeah.
Sorry, Megan was asking. Yeah. Okay, cool. Oh, look at the
great.
dictation. No. We should have had that up. I can't believe we didn't figure. That's terrible.
That's fantastic.
So cool.
But let me get Megan unmuted here for a second.
I hope that's how you pronounce it.
Hi. Yep, it's Megan.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Lot of great stuff. Thank you so much, everyone. I just wanted to put out there, I've been doing a lot of training for my institution. I work at an university. There's some great training through the Mental Health Commission of Canada. that also has a couple of courses. There's one called the Working Mind for employees. There's one for managers. They all have one called the Working Mind Sport. It's geared towards coaches and athletes, but I found I personally have gotten a lot out of it. It's based on bringing things down out of medical speak and making it really accessible to athletes, the general public, coaches. There's also some great graphics. I really liked your graph. They do things on a continuum with like the green to the yellow to the orange to the red. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this. It's also really fits in well with everything that's been talked about here, where it's really focused on supporting yourself as a practitioner, supporting yourself as a coworker, as a teammate, and how to have those tough conversations without having to be an expert. So I just wanted to put that out there to people. The Mental Health Commission of Canada has some really great resources. I'm a trainer myself, so I train those in my institution. And it's really in line with all the excellent information here.
Where are you, Megan, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm at MacEwan University in Edmonton.
Yeah, no, okay, great. Thank you for joining us, and those are great shares, and we'll make sure that we dictate this and get this out as well, and hopefully through the recording, maybe what we'll try to do is get this recording out to everybody, or at least accessible in a membership area. We got to look into all those details afterwards, but appreciate the share, absolutely.
Yeah,
Sure. And
thanks,
I'll
Megan.
throw the
That's
link
awesome.
down in the chat here. It's a really great resource.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we'll open it up. If anybody wants to type into the chat box, please feel free to do so. We have we have plenty of time here for questions. If there's stuff you want to go back to, slides you want to go back to, personal experiences, or how to reach out to somebody, or how to begin a conversation, Jens and Mike are certainly experts in those domains. And I don't know, for me as a practitioner, I think I don't think I
Will
did.
has a question.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Great. I just made 6 pages of notes, so I'll have a few more for you here in a second. So
All right, Will, yeah.
Hey, thanks, gentlemen. So I guess it's not really a question. It's just, you mentioned this, I think everybody talked on it with the issue of boundaries. It's such a gray area, but, trying to talk to an athlete or, even a peer, is there a way to know if you're pushing too much, or if you haven't pushed enough to try and get something out of them? Because even personal experiences, I know I've probably talked to people, and I might have asked them once, hey, things look rough, how are things going? And they said, no, things are fine. And then, 24, 48 hours later, I finally had a big breakdown. So that's, and I know it's such a tricky thing, and there's no guidelines for that, but I was just wondering advice for, kind of broaching the subject with somebody.
Yeah, I think I'd love to speak to that. Part of it is we're not responsible for other people's choices. So all we can really do is offer the support, like it sounds like you did. And if they say no, one thing you can say is, if you ever do want to talk, I'm here for you. And again, they're going to take that how they take it. And if they say no, you can always check back in with them, right? So I know last time I asked you just didn't want to talk about anything. I'm just checking back in. And then you gauge again, are they giving you the kind of real cold shoulder, or are you noticing a little bit of softening there? And just sort of, it's because when people are scared and in denial, or just etc., any type of, if they sense that kind of privacy is being threatened, they're going to shut down and shut down and shut down. So it really becomes our responsibility to leave them alone, and to kind of ask ourselves, number one, what is it about me that's getting upset that they don't want to listen? That's a hard one, but that's important to reflect on and just kind of check back in. And then lastly, I would say, if the person's behavior is verging on criminal or verging on suicidal, then as a citizen, you kind of have a responsibility to call the police, or to tell them, you're worried and that you have to call the police. So I hope that's helpful. I also have a video on that too, but I'll share all that stuff after. I hope that's helpful. And then, and sorry, and Joe had a question in the chat too, but I'll let this one ride for a minute and then we'll go.
That was great. Thank you.
No problem.
James, there's a question from Steve. I would like to answer that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so why don't you
Steve,
jump on that? Sorry, Jens, why don't you jump on that question, touching on referral if they don't want to be referred? And then Mike, if you don't mind, just pull up that thoughts versus feelings slide, and that'll cue us to jump over to that next.
Okay. Okay.
Steve, this can you come on? Can you unmute yourself?
Yep, go ahead.
This is a situation where it depends on what the challenge is or the issue is that you want him to refer. First of all, it's great that he has the trusting relationship with, I assume, with you, that he only wants to speak with you. But if this is a deeper issue where you're deeply concerned about his mental state and mental health, then the best way to approach this is that this is beyond your scope of expertise. And if you continue to advise your athlete or your patient, whatever you want to call it, any further, you're actually risking to get yourself into trouble, because you are not qualified to give any advice in regards to mental health, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety. And it's really important for your athlete to understand that you are actually risking to lose your license. So if you have a very close relationship with him and he still doesn't listen, it becomes challenging, and you have to probably take it to your peers, to your director, because, like I said, this is a very slippery slope, and if you are taking it too far, you're not doing anyone a favor.
Okay. Yeah, it's just yeah, a lot of athletes, you know, like we talked about on the call, right, will confide in us and a lot of stuff and want to use us as a soundboard almost to vent and release their thoughts and everything to us. And sometimes, yeah, it definitely goes beyond our scope of practice, and you're suggesting that they see somebody about it, but they refuse to go do it, that they only want to talk to us, right, about it, and constantly refuse to go. So I like that suggestion about threatening our livelihood almost too, right? And yeah,
it is definitely challenging. When I was working as an athletic trainer, I had similar situations, and it's really important that you have a deep conversation with him. And then, you know, if you have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, just lay it down and explain to him that you are an expert in athletic training and not in psychology or psychotherapy. And if that is your concern, it's definitely worth maybe, I don't know if you have any referral sources, but definitely reach out to CCMHS or to one of us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. And
that
Joe,
was great. I'm gonna jump in there just for a quick second.
Yeah.
Because that also aligns with the boundary stuff and the kind of scope of practice. So one thing you could say to add on to that great feedback is, if you want, I'll come with you. Like, I mean, I don't know if you're willing to do that, but if you are, this is more of as a friend kind of thing. But even if it's, I'll come with you to the team doctor, or I'll come with you to the counseling center or whatever, that might be an extra thing you could try to do and see how that person responds.
Yeah, and that actually works great. Like, I've done that a couple times with some athletes, and they've appreciated it and got the foot in the door with counseling to help them along the way, knowing that I've been there with them to even set up the appointment, right? So yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. That's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Okay, I'll talk about this slide quick. Or James, I interrupted you, so I don't want to.
No, yeah, just there was a little bit more clarity desired with this slide. Joe, you're unmuted, so if there's anything specific about it, or you just want Mike to go into a little bit more detail.
Just if you can use another illustration. I used the one with the referee as an idiot and bad call. I wonder, can you use another illustration possibly, Mike?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm going to use the simple one for me is when my kids are misbehaving, rather than saying, you're making me angry, which isn't helpful, it's like, I think what you're doing is not okay. And I'm feeling angry. Or like, it's so subtle, but I really think it's incredibly powerful, even to notice it in yourself. What would be another example with like, I think the,
sorry,
go ahead. Please.
No, you're just thinking like an iMessage. When you do this, I feel this is like an iMessage. Are you familiar with that type of thing? When you do this behavior?
Yeah, using I statements.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's the, I feel this and I think this. And then there's, to me, it looks like you are feeling this. And so when you're kind of like serving it up for that person to grab hold of it for themselves or not, rather than, if I go up to my kids and say, hey, you're being a little brat and blah, 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 blah. It's like, what's their response is like, fucking go screw yourself, dad. It's like, so I just find personally, this is an incredibly helpful one, even to sort out what's going on inside of me. You might also say, I'm having the thought that X. So I'm having the thought that I'm a horrible person, and I'm having the feeling that I feel like angry or sad, or I'm having the feeling of anger or shame or guilt.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, no, really, really helpful, Mike. And I've been doing some reading recently as well, sort of outside of the AT scope and in sort of this realm, not only for this to be a part of this presentation, but for my own well-being. And I think just placing that word feeling with in front of whatever it is that you are feeling, especially when it's a negative sense, but also the non-attachment to like that euphoric state as well, so that we're not, attaching too high or too low. So when I am angry, just by placing the word feeling in front of angry, it separates us from not being that emotion. It's an emotion that we are sensing versus all encompassing.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge because you're not your feelings or your thoughts. And so, yeah, it's sort of a big one.
Yeah. Antonia, I'm just unmuting you here and then you're up. Go for it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. It wasn't so much a question. It was just more like, thank you guys so much for all of the things that you guys are presenting, but especially Mike, what you're saying about thinking and feeling and how we have to decipher our own feelings and emotions in order to help other people is so huge. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And that's actually what I'm learning in my helping relations class for massage therapy now, is that we have to deal, excuse the expression, with our own shit in order to deal with like other people's stuff, because we can't even deal with whatever's in our backyard. How are we supposed to help other people, so it's like helping ourselves in order to help others. So I thought everything that you said was really, really amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love to hear that you're learning that too in your practice. That's my company's name starts with me. It's like we have to be, I don't know. Anyway, we could go down a whole rabbit hole there too, but
no,
I'm glad you found that helpful.
I think we should go down that rabbit hole, Mike, because it really does. And Jens does some similar work. And I've actually tied the therapeutic side and some of the yoga practices that I've studied and mindfulness and meditation and building that into self-care. To the point, like reach out to any one of us and talk on this stuff, because I've implemented, and not as a plug, but simply as I think it is massively important for us to recognize that self first. And whatever we recognize in ourselves, we can then be much more appreciative that that's in everybody else and in everything else as well. And so I've tied this together through retreat style workshops where we use physical yoga and we use mindfulness, and then we use physical practices of joint care and joint health and some strength and conditioning models, and blended it together to really put you, the practitioner, first, so that you can take care of yourself, realize, recognize all of the things in you. You get the output of taking care of yourself, and then you develop a skill set of that recognition in me, which therefore I can recognize outwardly. And Mike does some great work. Like if this is the first time you've heard about it, get on startswithme.ca, check it out, and be sure to sort of reach out. This is what this is all about, is connecting people to things that they may not know have existed before, but expertise in the area, and Jens as well. So speak to it a little bit, Mike, in terms of that self-care and what's in place.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, metaphorically, but in some sense in reality, like it's a matter of life and death for me. I have to take care of myself or I become a miserable human being very quickly. So by dedicating myself to taking care of myself, I put myself in a position to be able to help other people. And I think you and Jens are beautiful examples of that too. And I'm sure a lot of the people on this call, like, we're here because, you know, in one way or another, we've all been through the shitstorm in our own way. So it's also this idea of modeling. So when it comes to like mental illness or mental health disorders or like addiction, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's a sense of feeling alone and feeling separate from, and et cetera. So the more that we can model to each other that we're all fucked up in our own ways, and that we all got problems and that's okay, and et cetera, you know, that goes an incredibly long way. And we, you know, think about it like, okay, I'm just going to stop. Anyway, hopefully that helps as well. And those are that's ancient wisdom too. And all the modern neuroscience, et cetera, is all backing it up too. You know, it's sort of, this is not a secret. We know this stuff, but we like to overcomplicate things. And that's hard too.
When we overcomplicate it, then the answers become overcomplicated. When we oversimplify it, it seems too simple that it can't work. You know what I mean? And I think those are great points that are kind of, you know, leaking out as we go. But things that have been around for thousands of years have stuck around for thousands of years because they hold water. A message just came in privately from a colleague, a mentor, even in the professional space, and I just want to reiterate that in the AT scope, or in the scope of care in general, if I suspect that an athlete is in distress, you must involve a physician in that decision, especially if you are a part of a medical team. But within the ethical code, you must refer to a physician. So make sure that you understand your code of ethics, make sure that you understand what your role is, but also know that you have a duty of care to refer on, because you can't house some of those things where there is suicidal thoughts or thoughts of danger or endangering others. All of those things are critical, crucial, and that's also duty of care, is to understand our code of ethics and where we must refer and when we must refer. So appreciate that. It came through privately, so I think that's assuming that he doesn't or she doesn't want to have his or her name out there right now, but that's perfectly great. And I think that's great information that all of us need to reiterate on a regular basis as well. Yeah, and the links are there. I saw that come in, the TSN original, the problem of pain. I think there's going to be a second part to it as well. And it was a great documentary. There's a lot of good information there, but know that documentaries and know that things that are put into media are also told sometimes from one or only half a side of the story. And there's a lot of other information that's left out because you have to cut and edit and do lots of things. So take it with a grain of salt, use your common sense, and know that those are coming from sources of pain as well. And we've touched on it throughout the night. Those athletes are in pain. There's a lot of blame to be had. There's blame shifting, there's blame sharing, and there's partial accountability. And we all own a role in that. No matter how we cut it, things are happening in the pro space. They're happening in the university space and in amateur sport as well. If we continually turn a blind eye to it, wherever we are, in any world, we're no longer listening. And that's where we need to continue to open the door. And that's, again, that was the primary target of this evening. I hope you've all feel like you've benefited in that sense, and hopefully beyond as well. So if there are any other questions, we're pushing past the 9:30 mark, but Jens and Mike, if you guys have maybe 5 or 10 more minutes, we can stay on here and let the questions roll in.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay on for a little bit.
Sure. So let's call it 9:40. So 8 more minutes. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free, raise your virtual hand or your real hand if you're on camera, or both if you want to get very 2020. All right. Or tumbleweed.
I posted a link in the chat for that video I made on like those separating thoughts and feelings and using I statements and all that stuff. And here's this 2 years old, so I hope it's still totally relevant, but there's a link to the little post on mental health versus mental illness, and there's a bunch of links to CAMH and the Mental Health Commission and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, this has been great, guys, and there's a whole bunch of thank yous coming in both privately and in the open chat box. And listen, the thank yous go beyond just the presenters too. So we really appreciate your time and your willingness to put this into your schedule and share the conversation. And again, 100% of these proceeds will go to advocates, and we'll announce where that's going and how it's going, and as we dole that out. And if we do post this, it will be for a donation or for a fee as well. You paid to be here, people who pick this up after the fact as well, because there's a lot of money that needs to go to resources like CCMHS and like Brady's podcast. Brady's podcast was also posted. Jens, thanks for doing that. It's called Hockey to Heroin. It's a riveting story, and every guest he has on different angles and all those kinds of things. And the Puck Support Foundation is where Brady has taken his addiction recovery to be a source of strength, and definitely a portion of the proceeds here will go to Brady and in support of his foundation and the launch of what he's trying to do. Our contact information is up there. Again, my name is James Gardiner. I'm a certified athletic therapist and strength and conditioning specialist, founder of First Star Therapy and host of the First Star Let's Chat podcast, an athletic therapy roundtable. Jens Casten, certified sports psychology coach. Mike Stroh, just completing his MA recently. Congratulations, Mike, again on doing that in counseling psychology. Poppy Desclouds and Krista Van Slingerland from CCMHS were our panel this evening. We really appreciate you all for being here live, and anybody picking this up after the fact. I'm going to hit record end. If anybody wants to stick around just to say hi, please feel to do so. Feel free to do so. For everybody else, good night and thank you again. This has been fantastic. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Check us out online, firststartherapy.com. That's FIRSTAR therapy.com. Or email us with feedback, consult@firststartherapy.com. CONSULT@firststartherapy.com. On Instagram @firststar.therapy, and our podcast host @letschat.at. This is First Star Let's Chat, an athletic therapy podcast.